The scent of fear has a particular quality, metallic and sharp, like copper pennies soaking in vinegar. Mine had become so familiar to the others in my pack that they no longer wrinkled their noses when I passed. Today, as I stood among 20 other Omegas in the ancient stone amphitheater, that scent poured from me in waves, mixing with the sweet perfumes the handlers had doused us with at dawn. "Stand straight, worthless," a beta guard hissed, jabbing my ribs with his wooden baton. Though it hardly matters. No one will bid on you anyway. I straightened my spine, feeling the rough fabric of the white ceremonial dress scratch against my skin. The seasonal claiming was the most important ritual in wolf society, a sophisticated auction disguised as tradition. Alphas from every territory gathered to bid on Omegas, securing mates and strengthening bloodlines. For most Omegas, it was a day of possibility, perhaps even hope. For me, it was a formality before inevitable exile. "Remember what Mother told you," I whispered to myself, fingers instinctively reaching for the small wooden pendant hanging around my neck, a simple carving of a wolf with its head raised to the moon. My mother had pressed it into my palm the night before they banished her from the pack. "Your worth isn't determined by their perception. The moon sees your true self." The pendant was more than wood. It was my only inheritance, my only connection to someone who had ever loved me. A worthless Omega with a worthless trinket, the pack elders had sneered. But worthless things sometimes hold the greatest power. From my position in the back row of the Omega platform, I could see the arriving alphas, powerful men and women with confident gaits and expensive clothes, their scents radiating dominance and wealth. They were followed by their entourages of betas, each group claiming designated seats according to territory and rank. The Western pack sat closest to the stage, their alphas adorned with pelts and amber jewelry. The Northern territories filled the Eastern section, their representatives sleek in silver and blue silks. The Southern clans were the smallest delegation, but their alpha representatives wore the most elaborate ceremonial markings, intricate patterns of red ochre painted across exposed skin. But it was the center aisle that remained conspicuously empty, roped off with braided leather and flanked by guards in black leather armor. That section belonged to the royal pack, the rulers of all territories. Rumors had circulated for weeks that the Alpha King himself might attend this claiming. Not to bid, of course. He already had a harem of the finest Omegas from previous years. But to observe the proceedings as the 10th anniversary of his reign approached. "The royal pack isn't coming," whispered Elise, a pretty Omega with copper hair standing beside me. "Why would they waste time on a provincial claiming like ours?" I said nothing, keeping my eyes fixed on the smooth stones beneath my bare feet. Speaking out of turn had earned me enough lashings to know better. Besides, Elise wasn't speaking to me, not really. I was merely a convenient presence beside her, invisible as always. The crowd's murmur suddenly shifted to a hush, then erupted into excited whispers. A procession had appeared at the grand entrance. Even from my position, I could see the royal insignia gleaming on black banners. "The royal pack," Elise gasped, her scent shifting from nervous anticipation to undisguised excitement. The master of ceremonies, a portly beta with a voice that carried to the farthest seats, struck his ceremonial staff against the stone floor 3 times. "All rise for His Majesty, Alpha King Dominic Blackwood, ruler of the United Territories, commander of the royal pack, protector of the ancient ways." My heart stuttered in my chest. The Alpha King himself had indeed come. The crowd rose as one, heads bowed in deference. On the platform, we Omegas dropped to our knees, foreheads pressed to the stone as we'd been instructed. The position made my back ache and my knees burn against the rough surface, but I didn't dare move. Through the curtain of my hair, I stole a glance at the royal procession. Guards in gleaming armor formed a protective circle around a tall figure, who moved with such fluid grace that he seemed to glide rather than walk. I couldn't make out his features, just the broad outline of his shoulders beneath a cloak that appeared to be made from the pelt of a black wolf. As the king took his seat in the center of the royal section, the master of ceremonies allowed the crowd to sit. Only then were we Omegas permitted to rise to our knees again, heads still bowed. "The seasonal claiming shall now commence," the master announced. "May the moon guide each alpha to their destined mate." One by one, Omegas were called to the center of the platform. Each would step forward, turn slowly for inspection, and then stand silently as alphas called out their bids. Most Omegas were claimed quickly, especially those from prominent families or with desirable traits. Some even sparked bidding wars, their prices climbing to amounts that could sustain a small pack for years. Elise of the Riverbank Pack, the master called. Beside me, Elise rose gracefully, her copper hair catching the afternoon sunlight. She was the picture of Omega perfection. Petite, graceful, with wide hips ideal for bearing children. The bidding for her was frenzied, her price climbing until an alpha from the Northern Territories secured her for a sum that made the crowd gasp. The platform gradually emptied as Omegas were claimed. I remained kneeling, watching as even the less desirable candidates found mates. With each passing moment, the knot in my stomach tightened, not from hope, but from knowing what was coming, the humiliation that was the true purpose of my presence here today. Finally, I was the only one left. Lyra of the Crescent Valley Pack, the master announced, his voice noticeably less enthusiastic. I rose on trembling legs and stepped forward, keeping my eyes downcast as I'd been trained. The white dress hung loosely on my frame. I'd always been too tall, too angular for what was considered proper Omega beauty. My dark hair fell in unruly waves down my back, refusing the elaborate braids the handlers had attempted earlier. "Turn," the master instructed impatiently. I obeyed, making a slow rotation. The silence in the amphitheater was deafening. No calls came from the assembled alphas. No bids were offered. This was exactly what my pack had expected, what they had ensured with years of rumors about my defects. The worthless Omega, the one with no scent bond capacity, the cursed one. "Are there any bids for this Omega?" the master asked, following the protocol despite knowing the answer. A few mocking laughs echoed from the crowd. Someone called out, "She's worthless. Don't waste your gold on the defective Omega." The master was about to strike his staff, the signal that I was unclaimed and would be exiled from all territories, when a deep voice cut through the amphitheater. "I bid." The words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of shock through the crowd. Every head turned toward the royal section. The Alpha King had risen from his seat. Now, in the full light of day, I could see him clearly for the first time. He was younger than I'd imagined, perhaps 30, with sharp features that seemed carved from marble. His hair was as black as the pelt he wore, his eyes a startling amber that seemed to glow even from a distance. But it was his expression that captured me. Not the bored disdain I'd expected, but intense focus, as though I were a puzzle he was determined to solve. "Your Majesty?" the master stammered, clearly unprepared for this development. "I bid for this Omega," the Alpha King repeated, his voice carrying effortlessly across the now silent amphitheater. "Name your starting price." The master looked frantically toward my pack's elders, who sat in stunned silence. This was not part of their plan. Five gold pieces, the master finally managed, naming the lowest possible opening bid for an Omega, an insulting amount that reflected my supposed worthlessness. "I offer 1,000 gold pieces," the king stated, causing gasps to erupt throughout the amphitheater. It was an astronomical sum, more than most Omegas from royal bloodlines commanded, and he had offered it for me. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. I raised my eyes, unable to maintain the submissive pose in my shock, and found myself looking directly at the Alpha King. Our gazes locked across the distance, and something electric passed between us, a recognition I couldn't understand but felt in the marrow of my bones. "Does anyone challenge this bid?" the master asked, his voice higher than usual. No one dared. Even the wealthiest alphas knew better than to bid against their king. "Then it is done," the master declared, striking his staff 3 times. "Lyra of the Crescent Valley Pack is claimed by His Majesty, Alpha King Dominic Blackwood." As guards moved to escort me from the platform, I caught a glimpse of my pack elders, their faces contorted with rage and confusion. This wasn't supposed to happen. I was meant to be humiliated, then banished. Instead, I had been claimed by the most powerful alpha in the kingdom. As I was led down from the platform, my fingers found my mother's pendant, its familiar edges pressed into my palm, and I could almost hear her voice. "The moon sees your true self." For the first time in my life, I wondered if someone else might see it too. 2 royal guards flanked me as we approached the king's entourage. My heart pounded so violently I feared it might break my ribs. What would happen now? Why had he claimed me? The guard stopped, and I found myself standing before the Alpha King himself. He was even more imposing up close. Power radiated from him like heat from fire, his alpha pheromones so strong they made my omega instincts flare in response, something I hadn't thought my body capable of. He studied me with those amber eyes, his expression unreadable. Then he did something that shocked everyone present. The Alpha King reached out and tilted my chin up with one finger, forcing me to meet his gaze. "What is your name, little wolf?" he asked, his voice lower now, meant only for me. "Lyra," I whispered, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something equally dangerous. "Lyra," he repeated, as though tasting the word. "Do you know why I claimed you?" I shook my head, unable to form words with him so close. His scent, pine and smoke and something wild, overwhelming my senses. The Alpha King leaned closer, his lips nearly brushing my ear. "Because," he whispered, "I recognize what they've tried to hide. You're not worthless, Lyra. You're priceless." The royal caravan departed within the hour. I was hustled into a sleek black carriage with windows of actual glass, a luxury I'd only heard about but never seen. As we pulled away from the amphitheater, I caught a final glimpse of my former pack, the elders huddled together, their faces dark with fury at having their plans disrupted. None looked at me with regret or sadness. I was a possession that had unexpectedly increased in value, nothing more. "Your belongings, Omega," said a stern-faced beta woman who had introduced herself as Margot, the king's head of household staff. She handed me a small cloth bundle that contained everything I owned. 2 simple dresses, a wooden comb that had been my mother's, and a tattered book of pack histories I'd salvaged from the communal library. "Thank you," I whispered, clutching the bundle to my chest. Margot raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by my gratitude. "You'll be given new things at the palace. These..." She gestured dismissively at my meager possessions. "These aren't suitable for a royal Omega." I nodded but kept my grip tight on the bundle. These items might be worthless to others, but they were the only pieces of my past I had left. Like my pendant, they anchored me to who I had been before this bewildering turn of events. "The journey to the capital will take 3 days," Margot continued. "You'll remain in this carriage. Your meals will be brought to you. You will not speak to anyone except me or those I designate. Is that clear?" "Yes," I said, then hastily added, "Ma'am." She nodded curtly and turned to leave. "Wait," I called, surprising myself with my boldness. "Please, may I ask a question?" Margot paused, her hand on the carriage door. "One." I swallowed hard. Why did the king choose me? Something flickered across her face. Pity, perhaps, or concern. "It's not my place to speculate on His Majesty's decisions." She stepped out, then hesitated. "But if I were you, I wouldn't assume it was for the reasons Omegas are usually claimed." The door shut with a definitive click, leaving me alone with her cryptic warning and my racing thoughts. The carriage was more comfortable than any bed I'd ever slept in, with plush velvet seats and soft pillows. Still, sleep eluded me that first night, as we traveled along smooth royal roads. I stared out the window at the passing moonlit landscape, watching familiar forests give way to meadows, and then farmlands I'd never seen before. What did Margot mean? If the king hadn't claimed me as a mate or for breeding, then why? The possibilities that came to mind were troubling. Perhaps I was to be some sort of curiosity in his court, the worthless Omega who fetched a fortune, displayed like an exotic animal. Or worse, maybe there was truth to the rumors that the royal pack performed blood rituals requiring sacrifices. I clutched my mother's pendant, rubbing my thumb over the carved wolf. "What should I do?" I whispered to it, as though my mother might somehow answer through the worn wood. The pendant remained silent, but as moonlight streamed through the window and caught its surface, I was reminded of something my mother once told me. "When the path ahead is dark, little one, walk as though you can see. Often courage creates its own light." On the second day, as we passed through a bustling town, I caught glimpses of ordinary life. Children playing in streets, merchants hawking wares, couples strolling hand in hand. It seemed impossible that just yesterday I had been kneeling on that platform, certain of my coming exile. Now I was traveling to the capital as the property of the Alpha King. When the carriage stopped that evening, Margot arrived with a hot meal and fresh water for washing. "We'll reach the palace tomorrow afternoon," she informed me. "Tonight you'll need this." She placed a small vial of amber liquid on the seat beside me. "What is it?" I asked, eyeing the vial suspiciously. "A suppressant," she replied. "For your heat." I stared at her in confusion. My heats had always been irregular and mild. Another defect that had marked me as undesirable. "But I'm not due for..." "The proximity to the royal pack, especially to His Majesty, may trigger an early cycle," Margot explained, her tone softening slightly. "It happens often with new Omegas. The suppressant will prevent any complications during your introduction to court." I took the vial, turning it in my fingers. "Will I be presented to the court then?" Margot's expression became guarded again. "You'll be presented to His Majesty first. He will decide your place." She started to leave, then paused. "Take the suppressant before you sleep." "And Lyra?" Her use of my name startled me. "Remember that in the royal court, walls have ears and eyes. Guard your words and expressions carefully." After she left, I sat with the vial in my palm, wondering what she wasn't telling me. Eventually, I swallowed the bitter liquid and tried to sleep, dreams of amber eyes and whispered promises following me into fitful slumber. The capital city appeared on the horizon around midday on the third day, a sprawling expanse of stone buildings climbing the slopes of a great hill. At its peak stood the royal palace, a massive structure of dark stone and gleaming windows that caught the sunlight like flames. As our caravan wound through the city streets, people stopped to watch, some bowing deeply as the royal insignia passed. I shrank back from the window, uncomfortable with the attention even though no one could see me through the tinted glass. The palace itself was even more imposing up close, its walls soaring upward, gargoyles in the shape of wolves perched at every corner. Guards in black armor stood at attention as our carriage passed through massive iron gates into a courtyard paved with stones so smooth they gleamed like water. Margot opened the carriage door. "We've arrived. Come." I stepped out on wobbly legs, blinking in the bright sunlight after days in the dim carriage. The courtyard bustled with activity. Servants unloading supplies, guards patrolling, messengers rushing to and fro. No one paid me any mind, which was both a relief and oddly disappointing. Part of me had expected, what? A reception? Curious stares? Instead, I was just another delivery to the palace. "This way," Margot said, leading me toward a side entrance. "You'll be taken to prepare for your audience with His Majesty." Inside, the palace was a maze of stone corridors and grand chambers. I tried to memorize the route as we walked, but soon lost track of the turns and staircases. Finally, we arrived at a door carved with a crescent moon, the traditional symbol for Omega quarters. "These will be your rooms for now," Margot said, opening the door. I stepped inside and froze in amazement. The chamber was larger than my entire family's dwelling had been, with a four-poster bed draped in blue silk, a sitting area with plush chairs, and tall windows overlooking a garden. A door to one side revealed a bathing chamber with an actual porcelain tub, another luxury I'd only heard about. "The king's own Omega attendants will help you prepare," Margot said. "I'll return in 3 hours to escort you to His Majesty." Before I could respond, 3 women entered the room. All were Omegas, but unlike any I'd seen before. They carried themselves with dignity, their fine clothes and groomed appearance marking them as high status, despite their Omega designation. "This is Lyra," Margot told them. "See that she's properly prepared for the king." With that, Margot departed, leaving me with 3 strangers who regarded me with undisguised curiosity. "So you're the mysterious Omega from the provincial claiming," said the tallest, a striking woman with skin like polished ebony and close-cropped silver hair. "I'm Vivienne, the king's chief Omega attendant." "I'm Sarah," said another, a petite woman with almond eyes and cascading black hair. "And I'm Nadia," added the third. who had warm brown skin and copper curls framing a heart-shaped face. "Why am I here?" I blurted out, unable to contain the question any longer. The three exchanged glances. "That's for His Majesty to explain," Vivian said carefully. "Our job is to make you presentable for court. Let's start with a bath, shall we?" What followed was a whirlwind of preparations. I was bathed in water scented with oils I didn't recognize, my hair washed and combed until it shone, my skin scrubbed and moisturized with creams that smelled of lavender and honey. The attendants talked as they worked, but carefully avoided any substantive information about why I was there or what awaited me. "The blue will complement your eyes," Sarah said, holding up a gown of midnight silk with silver embroidery. "And perhaps the moonstone jewelry," Nadia suggested. "It suits her coloring." I submitted to their ministrations like a doll, allowing them to dress me in the exquisite gown, arrange my hair in an elegant style with silver pins, and fasten a delicate necklace of moonstones around my throat. They even applied subtle cosmetics to emphasize my features. When they finally led me to a full-length mirror, I barely recognized myself. The angular features that had been deemed too sharp for an Omega now looked regal, my height lending me an elegance I'd never noticed before. The gown's cut emphasized the subtle curves of my body without clinging inappropriately. Most startling was my expression. Beneath the fine clothes and careful grooming, my eyes held a wariness that no amount of preparation could disguise. "One last thing," Vivian said, approaching with a small crystal vial. "Another suppressant?" I asked. She shook her head. "This is a special scent, one that will make you noticeable to alphas." I frowned. "But my scent is defective." That's what my pack always said. Something like anger flashed in Vivian's eyes. "Let's just say we have reason to doubt your former pack's assessment." She dabbed the liquid at my wrists and throat. It had no scent that I could detect, but it left a cool, tingling sensation on my skin. A knock at the door announced Margot's return. Her eyebrows rose slightly at my transformation. "His Majesty awaits," she said. "Come." As I followed her through the palace corridors, my nervousness returned tenfold. What did the king want with me? What would happen in this audience? Margot led me to a set of massive doors guarded by 4 alpha warriors in royal armor. "The king's private study," she explained. "He sees you alone." The guards pulled the doors open, revealing a vast chamber lined with bookshelves that stretched to the ceiling. A massive desk of dark wood dominated one end, while a sitting area with leather chairs occupied the other. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city below, bathing the room in the golden light of late afternoon. And there, silhouetted against the windows, stood the Alpha King. He had changed from his ceremonial attire into more casual clothes, if the finest black trousers and a white shirt of some luxurious material could be called casual. Without his cloak, I could see the powerful breadth of his shoulders, the lean strength of his frame. He turned as I entered, those amber eyes finding mine immediately. "Leave us," he commanded, not looking away from me. Margot bowed and retreated, the doors closing behind her with a sound that seemed to seal my fate. For a long moment, the king simply studied me, his gaze traveling slowly from my face to my feet and back again. I fought the urge to fidget under his scrutiny, forcing myself to stand straight, chin lifted just slightly, not challenging, but not cowering either. "Do you know," he finally said, his deep voice sending an involuntary shiver down my spine, "how many Omegas I've claimed in my 10 years as king?" I shook my head, unsure if I was permitted to speak. "None," he said, stepping closer. "Until you." My eyes widened in surprise. The rumors of his Omega harem were false, then? He circled me slowly, like a predator assessing its prey. "Tell me, Lyra of the Crescent Valley Pack, why your elders were so determined to see you exiled." It wasn't the question I'd expected. I swallowed hard, choosing my words carefully. They said I was defective, worthless, that my scent bond capacity was broken. The king stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "And what do you believe?" I met his gaze, finding courage in the intensity of his attention. "I believe they feared what they didn't understand, a A smile curved his lips, the first I'd seen from him. It transformed his severe features, revealing a dimple in one cheek that seemed at odds with his intimidating presence. "Smart little wolf," he murmured. "Very smart indeed." The Alpha King gestured toward the sitting area. "Join me," he said, less a request than a command softened by his tone. I followed him to where two leather chairs faced each other across a low table of polished wood. He waited until I sat before taking his own seat, a courtesy I hadn't expected from an alpha, much less the king. "Wine?" he offered, reaching for a crystal decanter. "I've never had it," I admitted, then immediately regretted my honesty. It only highlighted how provincial I was, how unfit for this grand place, but the king merely nodded, as though my answer revealed something important. "Then tonight will be a night of firsts," he said, pouring a deep red liquid into 2 glasses. He handed one to me, our fingers brushing momentarily. Even that brief contact sent a jolt through me, like lightning beneath my skin. I took a tentative sip and nearly coughed at the unfamiliar taste, rich and complex, slightly bitter, yet somehow sweet at the finish. "It's interesting," I said diplomatically. The king laughed, a warm sound that seemed to fill the vast room. "You don't need to pretend with me, Lyra. Not ever." He set his own glass down and leaned forward, his expression growing serious. "I imagine you have questions." So many questions swirled in my mind that I hardly knew where to begin. I decided on the most pressing. "Why did you claim me?" "The truth, please." He studied me for a long moment, as though deciding how much to reveal. "Have you ever heard of a true mate?" My breath caught. True mates were the stuff of legend, alpha and omega pairs whose bond was ordained by the moon itself, whose connection transcended the ordinary pack hierarchies. Such pairs were said to be extraordinarily rare. I'd never met anyone who claimed to have found their true mate. "They're myths," I said carefully. "Stories told to pups. Many believe so," he agreed. "I thought so myself until 3 nights ago." "What happened 3 nights ago?" "I dreamed of you." His words hung in the air between us, impossible yet delivered with such conviction that I couldn't dismiss them. "You dreamed of me?" I repeated, confused. "But you didn't know I existed." "I didn't know your name or your face," he clarified. "But I knew your essence. In the dream, I followed a scent unlike any I'd encountered. Wild honey and storm clouds and something entirely unique. It led me to a figure standing in moonlight, back turned to me. When I called out, she began to turn, but before I could see her face, I woke." He leaned forward again. "The dream came again the next night and the next. On the 3rd morning, I felt compelled to attend the seasonal claiming in your territory, something I hadn't planned to do." I clutched my wineglass tighter, unsure how to respond to this revelation. "And you think I'm that figure? Your true mate?" "I know you are," he said simply. "The moment you stepped onto that platform, before I even saw your face clearly, I caught your scent, the exact one from my dream. When our eyes met, I felt it. The bond. My heart pounded against my ribs. But that's impossible. My pack always said my scent was defective, that I couldn't form bonds. Something dangerous flashed in his amber eyes. "Your pack lied," he said, his voice a low growl. "They didn't just lie. They deliberately suppressed your natural scent with herbs and potions, likely since you first presented as an omega." "What?" I whispered, shock coursing through me. "Why would they do that?" The king rose from his chair and moved to the window, his back to me as he stared out at the darkening sky. "There's something you need to understand about wolf hierarchy, Lyra. What they teach in the provinces is simplified. They tell you alphas are dominant, betas are helpers, and omegas are nurturers. But the truth is far more complex." He turned back to me, his expression grave. "In ancient times, before the territories were united, there existed a different kind of omega, rare, powerful. They were called Luna Omegas." "Luna Omegas?" I'd never heard the term. "Omegas blessed by the moon itself," he explained. "They possessed extraordinary abilities, enhanced empathy that allowed them to sense emotions, and even influence them. healing powers that could mend more than physical wounds, and a unique scent that called to their destined mate. When bonded with their alpha, a Luna Omega could amplify their mate's strength and abilities tenfold. He paused, watching my reaction carefully. They were revered, protected, essential to pack leadership. I shook my head, struggling to absorb this information. If they were so valuable, what happened to them? Power, he said grimly. As pack territories expanded and conflicts arose, some alphas began to fear the influence Luna Omegas wielded. They spread rumors that such Omegas were dangerous, unpredictable. Gradually, Luna Omegas were persecuted, driven into hiding. Those suspected of carrying the Luna bloodline had their children taken, their lineages disrupted. His jaw tightened. Eventually, they were believed extinct. My fingers found my pendant, clutching it like a lifeline as implications crashed over me. And you think I'm one of these Luna Omegas? I know you are, he said. Your scent alone confirms it. But there's more. Your resistance to the herbs they use to suppress you, your innate dignity despite years of mistreatment, the unusual color of your eyes that shifts with your emotions, all markers of Luna heritage. My mind raced back through my childhood, the strange reactions adults had when I first presented as an Omega, the bitter teas I was forced to drink daily, the isolation from other pack members. It had all been deliberate. My mother, I whispered, sudden understanding dawning. She knew. That's why they banished her. The king nodded. She must have been protecting you in the only way she could, by appearing to comply while secretly preparing you. I thought of her whispered lessons beneath blankets at night, teaching me to read when Omegas rarely received such education, telling me stories of ancient pack structures, pressing the pendant into my hand. The moon sees your true self. If what you're saying is true, I said slowly, then why didn't the elders just get rid of me permanently? Why allow me to reach the claiming at all? The king's expression darkened. Luna Omegas are protected by ancient magic. Direct harm to one brings terrible consequences to the perpetrator. They couldn't kill you without risking themselves. Exile after a failed claiming would have achieved their goal without breaking that taboo. His lips curled in disgust. They likely never imagined an alpha, especially the king, would recognize what you truly are. I rose from my chair, too agitated to remain seated. This was too much to process. My entire understanding of myself and my place in the world upended in minutes. Even if I am what you claim, I said. Even if you are my true mate, you're the Alpha King. You could have any Omega. Why would you want one who brings such complications? One raised in poverty, uneducated in court ways, possibly hunted by those who fear what she represents? The king closed the distance between us with 2 long strides. Before I could react, his hands cupped my face, tilting it up toward his. His touch was gentle but firm, his amber eyes burning into mine. Because you are mine, he said, his voice dropping to a register that resonated in my chest. As I am yours. The moon chose us for each other, Lyra. I've waited my entire life to find you. Something inside me recognized the truth in his words. A dormant part, awakening, stretching toward his energy like a flower seeking sunlight. The sensation was disorienting, yet undeniably right, as though pieces of myself long scattered were suddenly aligning. I don't even know your name, I whispered, suddenly aware of how close we stood. Your real name. His thumbs stroked my cheekbones, sending shivers down my spine. Dominic, he said softly. My name is Dominic. Dominic, I repeated, testing the feel of it on my tongue, his pupils dilated at the sound of his name from my lips. For a breathless moment, I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he released me and stepped back, though the intensity of his gaze never wavered. There's much you need to learn, he said, his voice rougher than before, about your heritage, about the court, about the dangers we face. But not tonight. He moved to a cord hanging by the fireplace and pulled it once. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow, your true life begins. A soft knock at the door announced Margot's return. The king gave her instructions I couldn't quite hear, then turned back to me. Margot will show you to your permanent quarters, he said. They adjoin mine, though with your own entrance and guards. Your safety is my priority. When will I see you again? I asked. surprising myself with my boldness. His lips curved in that half-smile that made my heart stutter. Soon, little wolf. We have a lifetime ahead of us, but for now, patience is necessary. There are preparations to be made, allies to secure before we announce what you are to the court. As I followed Margot from the study, my mind whirled with everything I'd learned. I was not defective. I was rare, valuable. Not worthless, but priceless, just as the king had whispered at the claiming. I was a Luna Omega, possibly the last of my kind, and I was, if the king was to be believed, his true mate. My new quarters were even more luxurious than the preparation rooms, a suite of interconnected chambers decorated in shades of silver and blue. A balcony overlooked gardens illuminated by moonlight, and the bed was large enough for 4 people, draped in silks and furs. His Majesty has assigned us as your personal attendants, Vivian said, appearing with Sarah and Nadia. I realized then that they must have known all along what I was, why I had been brought here. You knew? I asked, unable to keep the accusation from my voice. We suspected, Vivian corrected gently, but only the king knew for certain. He has been searching for a Luna Omega for years, studying ancient texts, following rumors, visiting provincial claimings. Why is it so important to him? I asked. Beyond the personal connection he believes we have. The 3 women exchanged glances again. That same silent communication I'd noticed earlier. That's not our story to tell, Nadia said carefully. But know this. The king has enemies, both within the court and beyond our borders, enemies who would do anything to prevent the return of Luna Omegas. You're in danger just by being here, Sarah added, but you're also our greatest hope. Before I could press for more information, they busied themselves with showing me the features of my new rooms, explaining the routines of palace life, and preparing me for sleep. By the time they left, my head was swimming with names, protocols, and warnings. Alone at last, I stepped onto the balcony, letting the cool night air clear my thoughts. The moon hung low and full in the sky, casting everything in silver light. On impulse, I removed my mother's pendant from where I'd kept it hidden beneath my gown and held it up to the moonlight. The carved wolf seemed to shimmer, the wood absorbing the moonlight until it almost glowed. For the first time, I noticed tiny symbols etched around the edges. Ancient wolf script I couldn't read but somehow recognized. What were you trying to tell me, Mother? I whispered. Did you know this would happen? The pendant offered no answers, but as I clutched it to my chest, a sense of rightness settled over me. Whatever trials awaited, whatever dangers lurked in the shadows of court life, I would face them. I was Lyra, a Luna Omega, the last of my kind. And somehow, against all odds, I had found my true mate in the Alpha King himself. As I slipped into bed, exhaustion finally overtaking me, I caught a familiar scent on the breeze from my balcony. Pine and smoke and something wild. Dominic was nearby, perhaps on his own balcony, watching over me. The thought brought a smile to my lips as I drifted into sleep, dreams of amber eyes and whispered promises following me into slumber. I was awakened by urgent voices and the smell of fear. Disoriented, I sat up to find Vivian rushing into my chamber, her usual composure fractured. "Get up," she ordered, quickly. "We need to move you." "What's happening?" I asked, already sliding from the bed. "Intruders in the palace," she said grimly, throwing open a wardrobe and pulling out a simple dress. "Assassins. The king believes they're here for you." Cold dread washed over me. How would they even know about me? "Spies," Vivian said, helping me into the dress with efficient movements. "The court has eyes everywhere. Someone recognized what you are and sent word to those who have spent centuries ensuring Luna Omegas remain extinct." Sarah and Nadia burst in, their faces tense. "Royal guards engaged them in the West Wing," Sarah reported. "But 2 broke through. They're heading this way." "The king?" I asked, my heart constricting with fear for him. "Leading the defense personally," Nadia said. "He ordered us to get you to the safe room." Before we could move, a crash echoed from the outer chamber of my suite. Vivienne shoved me toward a tapestry on the far wall. "The passage," she hissed. "Go." She pulled the tapestry aside, revealing a narrow door I hadn't noticed before. As it swung open, a snarling figure burst into the bedchamber. A man in black, a silver blade gleaming in his hand. His eyes found me immediately, cold with deadly purpose. "Luna, bitch!" he spat, lunging forward. Time seemed to slow as the assassin charged toward me. Vivian moved with surprising speed, placing herself between us, but she was an omega against a trained killer. He batted her aside with a brutal backhand that sent her crashing into the wall. "Run!" Sarah screamed, as she and Nadia rushed the attacker together. I should have fled through the secret passage, should have obeyed the king's orders to reach safety. But something else, something primal and powerful, rose within me. These women were risking their lives for me. I couldn't abandon them. My hand closed around my mother's pendant, which I'd kept beneath my pillow. As my fingers touched the carved wood, warmth flooded through me, radiating outward from my chest to my limbs. The sensation was foreign yet familiar, like remembering a language I'd never been taught. The assassin threw Nadia to the floor and slashed at Sarah with his blade, opening a cut across her arm that immediately bloomed red. His attention returned to me, his eyes widening slightly as he took in whatever he saw in my face. "Your kind should have died out centuries ago," he growled, advancing again. I stood my ground, the pendant burning hot against my palm. Words formed in my mind, ancient words in the old wolf tongue that I somehow understood. "Lunaris protego," I whispered, the syllables feeling right on my tongue. A silvery light erupted from the pendant, expanding outward in a shimmering dome that surrounded me and my fallen attendants. The assassin slammed into the barrier and recoiled as though struck by lightning, his weapon clattering to the floor, his face contorted with fury and fear. "Witch!" he spat, scrambling for his blade. Before he could retrieve it, the door to my chambers burst open. Dominic filled the doorway, his massive frame transformed by rage. His eyes had shifted fully to alpha gold, his canines elongated in a partial shift that spoke of barely contained fury. Behind him, royal guards poured into the room, weapons drawn. The assassin knew he was cornered. With a snarl of defiance, he pulled a small vial from his belt and hurled it at the silvery barrier protecting me. The glass shattered against my magical shield, dark liquid spattering harmlessly. "Poison," Dominic growled, his voice deeper than human. In 2 strides, he crossed the room and seized the assassin by the throat, lifting him clear off the ground. "Who sent you?" The man laughed, a terrible sound devoid of humor. "She'll never be queen," he choked out. "The old ways are dead. The Luna bloodline ends tonight." Then, before anyone could stop him, he bit down hard. A sudden acrid scent filled the room, poison hidden in a false tooth. The assassin convulsed once, then went limp in Dominic's grasp. The king dropped the lifeless body with disgust and turned to me, his eyes slowly shifting back to their human appearance. "Lyra," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Only then did I realize the silvery barrier still surrounded me. With a thought, I released it, the light retracting into the pendant before fading entirely. The moment the barrier disappeared, Dominic was at my side, his hands moving over me with urgent gentleness, checking for injuries. "I'm unharmed," I assured him, then glanced at my attendants. "But they need help." Guards were already attending to the 3 women. Vivienne was conscious but dazed, while Sarah's arm was being bandaged. Nadia appeared stunned but largely unhurt. Dominic cupped my face, his gaze intense. "You manifested protection magic," he said, wonder breaking through his concern. "Untrained. Unprepared. Yet you created a Luna shield. I didn't know I could," I admitted, still shaken. "It just happened." His thumb stroked my cheek in that now familiar gesture. "Your instincts are strong, stronger than I dared hope." His expression darkened as he glanced at the dead assassin. "But this attack proves what I feared. Word of your existence has spread faster than anticipated. We've lost the advantage of time." More guards arrived, reporting that a second assassin had been captured alive. Dominic issued rapid orders, his authority absolute despite the chaos. Within minutes, my attendants were being tended to by healers, the assassin's body removed, and the room secured. "You can't stay here," Dominic told me. "These chambers are known now, until we root out all the spies. Nowhere in the palace is truly safe. Where will I go? I asked, still clutching the pendant that had saved my life. His eyes held mine, determination replacing the earlier rage. To the one place our enemies can't reach us, the sacred grounds of the first pack. We departed before dawn, a small party consisting of the king, myself, Vivian, who had insisted on accompanying us despite her injuries, and 6 of Dominic's most trusted guards. We traveled in unmarked carriages, eschewing royal insignia for the anonymity of ordinary travelers. Dominic explained our destination as we journeyed north, away from the capital and into increasingly wild territory. The sacred grounds of the first pack were ancient lands where, according to legend, the first wolf shifters had made their covenant with the moon. Few knew of its exact location, and fewer still were permitted to set foot there. The grounds are protected by old magic, he told me, as our carriage bounced along increasingly rough roads. Only those of royal blood or Luna heritage can pass the boundaries without invitation. It's been my sanctuary since childhood. You visited often? I asked, curious about this glimpse into his past. His expression softened with rare vulnerability. My mother brought me there when I was very young. She was different from other royal consorts. She believed in the old ways, the old stories. A shadow crossed his face. After she died, I continued to visit. It was the only place I felt close to her. I hesitated, then placed my hand over his. I'm sorry about your mother. He turned his hand to grasp mine, our fingers intertwining naturally. She would have been overjoyed to meet you, he said quietly. She always told me I would find my Luna Omega someday, when the moon deemed it time. She knew about Luna Omegas when everyone thought they were extinct? Dominic nodded. My mother was a scholar of wolf history. She discovered ancient texts that had been hidden away, texts that spoke of the crucial role Luna Omegas played in maintaining balance between packs, between wolves and humans, between our world and the spiritual realm. This explained so much about his immediate recognition of what I was, his years of searching. Is that why you've been looking for a Luna Omega? To restore this balance? His amber eyes held mine. Partly, he admitted. The territories have been fractured for too long. War brews at our borders. The old alliances are crumbling. His grip on my hand tightened, but I would be lying if I said my search was purely strategic. From the moment my mother first told me the stories, I felt called, as though my Luna was out there, waiting. The sincerity in his voice made my heart ache with a strange mixture of joy and trepidation. I was still struggling to reconcile the worthless Omega I'd believed myself to be with this new identity, this destiny that seemed both miraculous and terrifying. What if I fail? I whispered, giving voice to my deepest fear. What if I can't be what you need? What everyone needs me to be? Dominic brought our joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent warmth spiraling through me. You won't fail, Lyra. The moon chose you. I chose you. And as I'm coming to understand, you're stronger than either of us knew. The sacred grounds of the first pack weren't marked by any human sign or structure. After 3 days of travel, our carriages simply stopped in a forest clearing that looked no different from the miles of wilderness we'd passed through. We continue on foot from here, Dominic announced, helping me down from the carriage. The forest around us seemed ordinary at first glance. Tall pines, underbrush thick with summer growth, the occasional bird call breaking the silence. But as we walked deeper among the trees, following a path only Dominic could see, I began to notice subtle changes. The air grew thicker, humming with energy I could almost taste. The scents intensified, earth and pine and something older, primal. After walking for perhaps an hour, Dominic stopped. Before us stood an ancient oak tree, its massive trunk wider than our entire party standing shoulder to shoulder, its branches spreading outward like protective arms. The guardian tree, he said reverently. We must present ourselves to pass. He approached the tree and placed his palm against its rough bark. I, Dominic Blackwood, Alpha King and descendant of the first pack, seek passage to the sacred grounds. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft glow emanated from beneath his hand, spreading outward through the bark in patterns like flowing script. Dominic turned to me, extending his hand. Now you. Heart pounding, I stepped forward and placed my palm beside his on the tree. The bark felt warm, alive beneath my touch. I, Lyra of the Crescent Valley Pack, I began, then hesitated. The title felt incomplete, insufficient. Tell it who you truly are, Dominic encouraged softly. Drawing a deep breath, I started again. I, Lyra, Luna Omega and Daughter of the Moon, seek sanctuary in the sacred grounds. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The glow beneath my hand intensified, spreading rapidly across the entire tree, until every branch and leaf seemed illuminated from within. A wind that wasn't wind, more like a conscious current, swirled around us, carrying whispers in a language too ancient to comprehend yet somehow familiar to my soul. When the light faded, the great oak had moved. Where there had been solid trunk, a passage now opened, revealing a path beyond. The Guardian has recognized you, Dominic said, his voice filled with wonder and satisfaction. Come. He led me through the opening, our companions following close behind. As the last guard passed through, the tree closed behind us, sealing us within the sacred grounds. What lay before us took my breath away. A valley spread out beneath the trail we stood on, shimmering with beauty that seemed both natural and otherworldly. A crystal-clear lake reflected the sky at its center, surrounded by meadows of wildflowers that shouldn't have been blooming together in the same season. Ancient stone structures, not ruins, but perfectly preserved circles and arches, dotted the landscape. And at the far end of the valley, built into the living rock of the mountainside, stood a structure that could only be described as a temple. Welcome to the true home of our kind, Dominic said, his hand warm against the small of my back. As we descended into the valley, I felt a strange sensation, as though parts of myself long dormant were awakening, stretching toward this place like plants seeking sunlight after a long winter. My senses sharpened. I could hear the heartbeats of rabbits hidden in the underbrush, smell the distinct signatures of every flower in the meadow, feel the energy of the earth beneath my feet with each step. What is happening to me? I whispered, both exhilarated and frightened by the changes. Your Luna nature is responding to the sacred grounds, Vivian explained, watching me with knowing eyes. This place amplifies our wolf essence. For a Luna Omega, the effect is particularly strong. We made our way to the temple, where austere beauty gave way to intricate craftsmanship. Carvings depicting wolf history covered every surface, the first shifting, the covenant with the moon, the formation of the pack hierarchies, and notably, several panels showing female figures with moonlight emanating from their hands. Luna Omegas. Inside, the temple opened into a circular chamber with a ceiling open to the sky. Designed, I realized, to allow moonlight to flood the space at night. Dominic directed the guards to secure the perimeter, then led me to a chamber off the main hall. These will be your quarters, he said, opening the door to reveal a beautiful room with a bed draped in furs, walls decorated with ancient symbols, and windows overlooking the lake. Mine are adjacent. We'll be safe here while you train. Train? I echoed. Your powers manifested instinctively against the assassin, he explained. But to truly fulfill your potential as a Luna Omega, you must learn to control them deliberately. His expression grew serious. We don't have the luxury of time. Our enemies will be searching for us. And when they can't find us, they'll grow desperate. We must be prepared when we return to face them. Who exactly are they? I asked, the question that had been burning since the attack. Who would risk assassinating someone in the royal palace? Dominic's jaw tightened. A faction that has existed in shadows for centuries, descendants of the Alphas who first sought to eliminate Luna Omegas. They call themselves the Pure Order. They believe wolf hierarchy should remain rigid, with Alphas holding absolute power. The emergence of a Luna Omega, especially one bonded to the king, threatens everything they've built. And we're going to fight them? The task seemed impossible. I was still learning who I was, still struggling to believe in abilities I'd never known I possessed. Dominic's amber eyes held mine, fierce with conviction. We're going to destroy them, he said simply. Together, as we were always meant to. He stepped closer, his scent, pine and smoke and wildness enveloping me. But first, he murmured, his voice dropping to a register that made my pulse quicken. There's another matter we must address. What matter? I asked, though something deep inside me already knew. The bond, he said softly. Our bond. It's begun to form naturally, but for your powers to fully manifest, for us to reach our true potential together, it must be completed. His hand came up to cup my cheek, his touch sending sparks across my skin. Tonight, beneath the full moon, we must perform the ancient claiming ritual. My breath caught. You mean? I mean that tonight, if you consent, you will truly become mine, he said, his thumb tracing my lower lip in a caress that made me shiver. And I will become yours, equal partners in power, in purpose. His gaze burned into mine, in all things. The intensity between us had built since our first meeting, a pull that defied explanation, yet felt as inevitable as gravity. Now, standing in this ancient place where the very air seemed to recognize me, I finally surrendered to what my heart had known from the moment our eyes first met across the amphitheater. Yes, I whispered, the word feeling like both an ending and a beginning. I consent. His smile transformed his face, joy breaking through his usual gravity. Before I could react, he pulled me against him, one arm circling my waist, while his other hand tangled in my hair. His lips found mine in a kiss that started gentle, but quickly blazed into something fierce and claiming. I melted into him, my arms winding around his neck as I returned his kiss with equal passion. This was what I had been waiting for without knowing it. This connection. This belonging. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the worthless Omega, the cursed one, the exile. I was Lyra, Luna Omega, true mate to the Alpha King. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Dominic rested his forehead against mine. Tonight, he promised. His voice rough with desire and something deeper, a reverence that made my heart ache with unexpected tenderness. Under the moon that has guided us to each other, we will complete what fate began. As twilight descended over the sacred valley, Vivian helped me prepare for the ritual. I bathed in waters from the sacred lake, my skin anointed with oils scented with moonflower and wolf's bane, traditional preparations for a Luna bonding that hadn't been performed in centuries. The ritual is ancient, Vivian explained as she combed my hair, letting it fall loose down my back. It combines aspects of traditional mating with elements unique to Luna Omegas. She hesitated, then added more softly, "It will change you both. The bond between a Luna and her alpha is not like ordinary matings. Your souls will be joined in ways that transcend the physical." "I'm ready," I said, surprised by the certainty in my voice. She smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. "Yes," she agreed, "I believe you are." The gown they had brought for the ritual was unlike anything I'd ever worn. Sheer white fabric that seemed to capture and hold moonlight, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that matched the carvings on the temple walls. Around my neck, I wore my mother's pendant, which had taken on a subtle glow that intensified as the full moon rose. As the moon reached its zenith, Dominic came to escort me to the ritual chamber. He wore only black trousers, his chest bare in the tradition of ancient claiming ceremonies. The sight of him, powerful, beautiful, mine, stole my breath. "You look like the moon incarnate," he said softly, his eyes tracing over me with reverence. He led me to the central chamber of the temple, now bathed in moonlight that poured through the open ceiling. The guards and attendants had withdrawn, leaving us alone beneath the watchful gaze of the moon. In the center of the chamber, a circle of ancient stones had been arranged, each carved with symbols of wolf and moon. Dominic guided me into the circle, then took his place opposite me, our hands joined between us. "Beneath the moon that guides our path," he began, his voice resonating in the stone chamber. "I, Dominic Blackwood, Alpha King, claim you, Lyra, as my Luna, my mate, my equal in all things." The ancient words flowed from him naturally, as though he had been born knowing them. As he spoke, the moonlight seemed to concentrate around us, creating a visible nimbus that pulsed with each word. When it was my turn, the words came to me as if whispered by 1,000 ancestral voices. Beneath the moon that has watched over our kind since the first shifting, I, Lyra Luna Omega, claim you, Dominic Blackwood, as my alpha, my mate, my partner in all things. As the final syllable left my lips, the moonlight intensified, becoming almost solid around us. My pendant grew hot against my skin, its glow merging with the moonlight until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Dominic drew me closer, until our bodies pressed together within the circle of light. With body, he murmured, his lips finding mine in a kiss that sent fire racing through my veins. With heart, I whispered when we parted, placing my palm over his chest where his heart thundered beneath warm skin. With soul, we said together. And the light exploded around us, through us, binding us in ways that transcended physical understanding. In that moment of joining, I saw Dominic's soul laid bare before me, his childhood loneliness after his mother's death, his struggle to rule justly in a court riddled with ambition and deceit, his years of searching for me. And I knew he saw mine, the rejection and cruelty I'd endured, the moments of quiet defiance, the hope I'd never quite surrendered. When the light finally receded, we remained in each other's arms, forever changed. The bond hummed between us, a living connection I could feel as tangibly as his skin against mine. Through it, I sensed his emotions, his strength flowing into me as mine flowed into him. My Luna, he breathed against my lips. My Alpha, I answered, the title no longer one of subjugation but of partnership. Later, in the privacy of chambers prepared for our union, we completed the claiming in the most ancient way, bodies joining as our souls had, the bond solidifying with each touch, each whispered endearment, each moment of shared pleasure. Beneath his hands and lips, I discovered parts of myself long dormant, power unfurling within me like wings spreading for the first time. And in the quiet aftermath, as we lay tangled in furs with moonlight painting our skin silver, I finally understood what my mother had tried to tell me. My worth had never been determined by the perception of others. The moon had always seen my true self, had always known what I was destined to become. Not the worthless Omega they had labeled me, but a Luna, the last of an ancient line, mate to the Alpha King, and perhaps the beginning of a new era for our kind. They said I was worthless, I murmured against Dominic's chest. His heart beat strong beneath my ear, until you bought me. His arms tightened around me, his lips pressing against my hair. I didn't buy you, little wolf, he corrected gently. I found you, as the moon always intended.